Hey guys, how's it going? So I've had a couple of people ask me why I changed the way I grow my orchids, and it's kind of simple. Trying to maintain a collection of almost 200 plants in live sphagnum moss and clear vases was just, it took way too much effort and took way too much maintenance. And when I was moving around and stuff and didn't have time to water and I had to ask my parents to take care of my plants for me, I didn't want to have them watering almost 200 plants every single day to keep the moss, green, live, and healthy. So before I did all that traveling and stuff, I converted everything that I could into regular, just New Zealand sphagnum moss, the stuff that you get from Best Grow or, just off Amazon or in flower shops and whatnot. But let me get over here. I just converted everything that I had to this sphagnum moss. It's a lot easier to maintain. It does decompose and over time and needs to be replaced. So I need to repot my orchids every now and then, but the maintenance of it is just so much easier. I don't have to keep exactly 1/8 of an inch of water in the container, the glass vase at all times. This stuff I can just pack in here and water my orchid and then leave it, forget about it until basically it gets brown, dry, and crispy like this, and then I just give it some more water. So some other plants did really well out of the gate in just this leca, so I just kept them in that. And this stuff you can basically use the same way as growing hydroponically. You can just fill up the reservoir however high you want it to. So this one is my Psychopsis Mendenhall in bloom, and for whatever reason he liked to be in this more than he liked to be in the sphagnum moss. He put out these two growths in this leca, and when I bought him from the nursery, he had this one last growth, and when he was in the sphagnum moss, he didn't do anything. He just stayed dormant for about a year. So I repotted him into this, and then just like that, he put out this growth, this flower spike, and now he's working on another one right in there. So yeah, I just couldn't maintain all the plants I had in live sphagnum moss, and I was noticing over time that the longer the moss was in the vase with the orchids, the more cyanobacteria was building up. You can see this was a vase that had the live sphagnum moss in it. Where the moss was growing, that top layer was getting a ton of cyanobacteria and tons of algae, and it was killing off all the root tips. So that's another reason why I switched from live sphagnum moss to either this regular dead New Zealand sphagnum moss, leca, or semi-water culture. So just a little update on and reasoning why I switched from growing everything in live sphagnum moss to switching to the dead sphagnum moss. It's just so much easier to maintain. I can let it dry out for periods of time without worrying about the moss dying and thus adversely affecting my orchids. So yeah, that's basically why I did that. But anyways, since it's not necessarily watering day, but some of my plants do need water, I'm going to get my little watering dealio and show you how I water. Now that most of my plants are in these self-watering pots, I can just water from the top and let it run through and let it sit in there, and there's a wick in the bottom or a little strand of sphagnum moss that goes from the pot into the reservoir, and that pulls water up and evenly distributes moisture throughout the entire container. So I'm gonna pause it and come back. All right, I'm back, and Stella's checking out my watering contraption. She's not quite sure about it, but this is what I use. It's a 2 gallon, just regular, like sprayer you'd use for weeds. I bought this brand new, so it never had any chemical in it or anything, so I wasn't too worried about using this to water my orchids with. But I still do the the same watering and fertilizer method. I have my calcium nitrate, my high potassium and phosphorus fertilizer, and then over there in the back is my magnesium sulfate, or you know, just your generic Epsom salts. So I gave this thing a few pumps, and what I do is I just take get the nozzle here, just take the nozzle and I just spray down my orchids. It's really pretty simple, and I water them and let the water run through till it comes out the bottom. And yeah, they love it. I always keep the TDS, or the total amount of fertilizer in the water, under 200 ppms, or parts per million. That way the plant isn't getting too much fertilizer, and everyone knows who grows orchids that orchids are plants that can't handle high amounts of fertilizer or dissolved solids in their water. So this method I'm doing is it's just easier. I know that people before have seen some of my other videos, and I did a really extensive video about a year ago on exactly how I prepare my fertilizers and what I do, or how I mix it depending on what the plant needs. And when I was doing that, yeah, my orchids were doing amazing. They were all in the live sphagnum moss, and they really were just loving life. But at the same time, like I said before, it was just a lot of maintenance, a lot of work. And in the wintertime, when I was living in Montana, I had a seasonal job. So in the wintertime, I didn't have a job. I was able to stay at home and play with my orchids, tinker with my orchids, figure out what exactly I need to do to get them to thrive. And now that I have a full-time job and I'm living down here in Idaho, I don't have the luxury of sitting home all day, every day for 3-4 months to play with my orchids and figure out what every single one needs, you know, individually. So now I switched everything over to the dead sphagnum moss, or whatever media that particular plant liked at the time. And ever since then, it's just been a lot easier to handle my orchids and to let them, you know, do their own thing without too much intervention. But this is what I do with this guy. I just sprinkle the water over the roots until there's about 1/8 of an inch of water sitting in the bottom, and wetting the roots from above just allows all of the aerial roots to get moisture, and letting them sit in water just creates basically a humid chamber around the root system, and it keeps the growth tips alive and happy. So I'm not going to water my entire collection with this on video. I need to use both hands to lift up this watering pump. But anyways, yeah, guys, this is how I water my orchids. This is how I've been doing it for almost a year now. And like I said, I just had to switch everything from live sphagnum over to this dead sphagnum moss because it's just so much easier to maintain. And you can see here there is some algae buildup right around this root, but you know what? Compared to the amount of algae that was growing when I was using live sphagnum moss in those clear vases, the entire outer section of each vase would just be solid green, just completely covered in algae, and there was no way to treat that or remove the algae without having to unpot every single orchid and remove all the sphagnum moss, rinse it out, use that Physan solution. But even then, I couldn't use the Physan to remove the algae without damaging or temporarily burning the moss. So sphagnum moss, because it is has really soft, tender tissue, when you introduce a chemical agent to try and kill off something that is growing on the moss, like the algae and the cyanobacteria, yeah, the physan killed the cyanobacteria and the algae, but at the same time, because the moss was so tender and green and always in water, the physan also burned the end tips, the growth tips of the sphagnum moss. So that's another reason why I was just over growing in live sphagnum moss, and I might tinker with it again in the future. I know some of my plants did, well, all of my plants did astoundingly well. I mean, that is the best way to grow them if you have the time to maintain and clean it. But some of my plants, they're just not doing as well in the dead sphagnum. You can see here that this is an older leaf, and this is an older leaf. These are the ones that were growing when I had this plant in live sphagnum, and since I switched it over, the leaves have just been smaller. I mean, it's not less healthy. It has bloomed in the dead sphagnum, the dried sphagnum moss, but this is damage from the thrips infestation I had, and it's better now. It's cured. This new leaf right here is really happy. It's green. It's not wrinkled. It's not getting munched on by pests. So this is one I might transfer back into live sphagnum. I might just buy a gallon of it and just use it on a couple of my plants just to see if they do better in the live sphagnum. I mean, I know they will, but I don't want to get overwhelmed like I did last time. So a few of them, that guy, I might even try one of these cattleyas. I'm not entirely sure what I'll use in live sphagnum moss. Definitely that one phal. That's my mini Mark, and he will put out almost a foot-long flower spike on that tiny little plant. I mean, here's my hand size compared to this orchid, and it's one of the smallest, most compact miniature Phalaenopsis I've ever seen or owned, but it creates 1.5 foot long flower spikes that branch, and they just put out this huge they put out a huge display of creamy white flowers with orange and pink speckling on the petals and sepals, and the lip is a real deep orange. So yeah, I'll definitely put that guy back in the live sphagnum, and I might try some of these other ones. I'm not entirely sure which ones yet, just because everything that I do have is doing really, really well, and these larger Phalaenopsis, I don't want to have to try to maintain, you know, an 8-inch size or diameter vase full of sphagnum moss, and these bigger Phalaenopsis, they have really big, extensive root systems. So the ones that are doing great in the dead sphagnum, I'm just gonna leave that way, and then I'll probably just order a gallon of live sphagnum. I know I'm definitely gonna put my Miltonia Sunset in the live sphagnum. I had this guy bare rooted for a while back when I first got him, and I did a repot video on him actually, and I had him bare rooted. I divided it, I cleaned the root system. I put him in live sphagnum. He did great for a year and a half, and then, like I said, when I was moving around, I had to transition everything to dead sphagnum, and he did not like that transition. So my Miltonia Sunset, he's definitely one I'm gonna try to put back into live sphagnum, and you can see I have him sitting in leca just because I needed something in there to help maintain humidity and you know, disperse the moisture evenly, and leca does disperse moisture evenly. It's just not the best media for retaining moisture. So I'm gonna get him out of that leca, and he's doing better. He is putting out actual mature growths. Before, he was just slowly dying, getting smaller and smaller and smaller in the dead sphagnum moss. So I think when I do order live sphagnum, I'm gonna put him into live sphagnum. I'm gonna put my Phal Mini Mark into live sphagnum, and definitely my Nellie Eiler. This one, same case. I had this guy in live sphagnum, and I've wanted a Miltonia. Well, it's in the Miltonia family, but it's technically a Brugueria or an Oncidopsis hybrid. So the Nellie Eiler. This is the variety Swiss Beauty. I got it from Seattle Orchid when they had them in stock. It's very, very rarely, and I got put on the email list to get one. And as soon as they got had a bunch in, I ordered 2 of them just in case, because I'm one of those people that likes to be prepared for things. But yeah, every single growth he put out in the dead sphagnum, like this one right here, this one right here, this one back here, they weren't maturing, and they were just turning yellow and drying out. So now that I've stopped moving around and I do have him back in a really humid environment, he is putting out some new growths that look like, let me zoom in here, that look like they're not gonna get wrinkled or pleated or kinked or anything. So hopefully there's another one right here that's coming in really nice, and one out here on the back. So hopefully maybe I can get this guy divided up and get all these old, immature, basically dead, useless growths off, and start him on a new growth path in live sphagnum, and see if that really was the issue, and see if I can get him to bloom again. But this is one of my favorites, the bright red flowers with the beautiful lemon scent to them. I really want to get him back on in live sphagnum moss. And some of my other cattleyas, this guy, my no ID Hawaii Cattleya, I had this guy in live sphagnum, and I think I did a video on him, and I know I posted pictures when he was only like 4, maybe 5 growths, or 5 suitables. I think it was only 4. He had his 3 originals, and he put out one real big, really nice growth, and that's when I had it in live sphagnum. It was doing amazing. It was blooming, and then I switched to the dead sphagnum, and unfortunately, when I did switch it, that's when I had the thrips outbreak, and every single new growth it would put out, it would try to bloom, but the thrips would just eat the end of the flower spike, and it would abort. So this hasn't bloomed in over a year because it had thrips, and I didn't realize what the issue was. At first I thought it was because I switched it to the dead sphagnum and it just didn't like it, and I thought, well, I'll just keep on keeping on and giving it water and fertilizer and light, and every single time it would go to bloom, it would abort the spike, and I would look and there'd be scars on it. So I figured out maybe it's a lack of humidity, maybe it's too much fertilizer, maybe I'm burning it, maybe some other factor is involved with it not blooming. But nope, it was the thrips, and the thrips actually got a hold of every single plant in my collection, except this guy. Excuse me, I have a creature over here. Quit. This guy, he never got the thrips. I'm sure he had them at one point, but his leaves are so thick and so waxy. And same with this guy. His leaves are so thick and so waxy, and his flower spike is like bamboo. It's woody. And I think that's the reason why these guys never got affected by the thrips, because they have so much substance to their leaves and their flower spikes that the thrips, they have piercing mouth parts. So I think that was the reason why these never got affected, because the substance in their leaves prevented the thrips from actually attacking it. So anyways, I just wanted to give you an update and answer the questions as to why I no longer grow in live sphagnum moss. And yeah, it's just because I just didn't have the time to maintain my whole collection, and especially when I was traveling around, my parents, I wasn't going to force them to take care of 200 plus plants with watering every single day and making sure the humidity was right and the lighting was right, and that they were cleaning the vases when they were getting algae buildups and all that crazy fun stuff that comes with growing in live sphagnum. So a little update and a little video to answer your questions, and feel free to leave your comments or more questions down below, and I'll get another video going. Thanks guys, see you later.